We're talking about Bridget Jones. It is the 20th anniversary, if you can stand it, of when that movie came out. I've seen this movie so many times. And even though Bridget Jones' Diary 2 bugged us because she was so greasy and dirty, I still love it. And Bridget Jones 3 with the baby, which a lot of people didn't see.
I didn't.
Oh, Lori, it's so good with Patrick Dempsey. It's so good.
Oh, yes, I did see that.
So
I did.
good.
It just...
She was just Miss Jones to me.
I love this song.
And then I said, Miss Jones.
Which Jones are we talking about? We're talking about Bridget Jones. It is the 20th anniversary, if you can stand it, of when that movie came out. And that movie, I thought, was just the bomb. And it was based on a book by, but actually it's kind of an interesting story, a la Sex and the City, how Candace Bushnell wrote a column for the New York Observer.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, The Independent, which is a newspaper in London, asked Helen Fielding if she would write a column about herself and her single life in London. And she goes on to say, as much as I needed the money, writing about myself seemed really embarrassing and revealing. So I offered to write an anonymous column instead, using exaggerated comedic fictional character. And she thought no one would read it and she would be dropped after 6 weeks. Well, lo and behold, it was a big hit. She writes a book, and the first book was Bridget Jones' Diary. So
was her character, was the person that she was writing about named Bridget Jones as was that?
I think so.
And
I think so in the column. So here's who they declined the role: Toni Collette, if people remember her.
Oh yeah, we remember. We know her. She's amazing.
Kate Winslet was considered, but they decided she was too young, and Toni Collette declined. She was up for it. She was on Broadway at the time, though, starring in The Wild Party. Don't even know the play. Kate Winslet was very much considered by producers, but they thought they were too young. And then they ended up signing Renée Zellweger.
And then Kate Blanchett.
Was she up for it?
Cameron Diaz, Nicole Kidman, Naomi Watts, and Catherine Zeta-Jones until they found out her age, her real age.
Lori always has to get that in, Rocco. Catherine Zeta-Jones is not 50, she's 60.
She is.
Okay, so Hugh Grant, who it stars Hugh Grant.
Let me hold up my Parade magazine. I'll see if I can do this
show and tell.
So
while you're doing that, Hugh Grant only signed on, and he was a big deal at the time because when they rewrote the script, Richard Curtis, he says, just get Richard to come in and rewrite the script. And so they did, and he signed on to that. For Renée Zellweger to play the role, Lori's laughing at herself because she's trying to do show and tell in front of our cameras, but she's off camera.
I can't take a selfie. I don't know how to think backwards looking at a camera. There must be a trick.
This is why you're not good at puzzles.
To your right.
Renée Zellweger gained 17 pounds for the role.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. And then she also, the book is, she works at a publishing company at the Times, and the publishing company is called Picador. And
she worked there for real to research?
She worked there for real for 3 weeks to do research, and they gave her a fake name. No one knew who she was. She had to do things, but she was passed off as the sister of the chairman. So they were just going to let her work there. And she had a picture of Jim Carrey on her desk at the time because she was dating him.
Oh, that's
they
right.
met in Nurse Betty or whatever that was at the time. But Kimberly Press is the name of the publishing company. And they were also the publishing company that published Pride and Prejudice.
Oh,
and Mr. Darcy.
Which, of course,
Mark
Bridget
Darcy,
Jones' Diary is basically kind of
Pride and Prejudice.
A modern interpretation of Pride and Prejudice.
Let's see. There is an epic fight scene in it with the two men vowing for her love, Hugh Grant and Mark Darcy. That wasn't choreographed at all. They just did it.
Yeah.
And people were just like so amazed. But when they went through the glass, they did have a body double do that. But the rest of it, they did themselves and improvised. Salman Rushdie was in the film.
That's right.
And he was friends with Fleming. So,
Fleming?
Not Fleming. What's her name?
Helen Fielding?
Or Fleming. Helen Fielding. And so they asked him to be in it. And he said he'd be in it.
You get your poundage wrong.
I did.
It's 25 pounds that Renée Zellweger packed on.
Oh, they said 17 in mine. Depends on.
Wikipedia is not correct. I'm going with Renée Zellweger by quote.
Okay.
That's what she said was 25 pounds. She just ate and ate and ate. Because we know how thin.
Here, now we have a little bit of her.
Okay, let's listen.
I suddenly realized that unless something changed soon, I was going to live a life where my major relationship was with a bottle of wine. And I'd finally die fat and alone and be found 3 weeks later, half eaten by wild dogs.
Remember this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I've seen this movie so many times. And even though Bridget Jones' Diary 2 bugged us because she was so greasy and dirty, I still love it. And Bridget Jones 3 with the baby, which a lot of people didn't see.
I didn't.
Oh, Lori, it's so good with Patrick Dempsey. It's so good.
Oh, yes, I did see
It's
that.
so
I did.
good.
It just wasn't really memorable.
You know, I've watched it again.
Okay, that's why it's memorable.
Because and the soundtrack for this, now here was kind of one of the classic scenes when she was getting it on with Hugh Grant the very first time.
Now, these are very silly little boots, Joan. And this is a very silly little dress. And, these. Absolutely enormous pants.
No, don't apologise. I like them. Hello, Mummy.
Granny panties on, remember?
Panties, that's right.
Hello, Mommy. He's so just
Listen, that's a very real thing. Like, oh God, I've got the wrong underwear on.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like if you got your granny panties or your period panties or whatever.
Wasn't expecting it today panties.
Right. And I guess I remember when Hugh Grant was making the rounds for interviews for, what was that movie that he was in?
The recent one?
Yeah, the recent one, The Undoing.
The Undoing, the TV show.
And he talked about, he and Renée Zellweger are still friends, but about how skeptical he was that a Texan could play this British woman. And he said that the first week, her first attempt, she sounded like, he described it as Princess Margaret having a stroke. But within a week, and maybe working at this public, she'd picked it up and you couldn't tell the difference. She was that good at it. And then the fictional Bridget Jones character made such an impact on pop culture in 2016. The BBC named Bridget Jones one of the most influential women of the last 70 years.
Seriously. Oh gosh.
So,
and I think when this movie came out, so it would be 2001. We didn't work here yet.
nope.
We had developed our nipples, though. We were doing that
We
business.
did. Yep.
We were selling those.
I
And
was
we were
working at Sun Country.
Yep.
I think maybe you were too.
in 2001.
Oh, not 2001. No,
You were at the
we're
Star
already gone.
Tribune. I was
Mhm.
at Business Incentives. And, but we were doing the nipple thing and we were starting to kind of get a buzz about we were interviewed a lot for the nipples. And
Yes, we
that's
were.
when we were trying to figure out if we should have a TV show.
Of
Or-
course.
And then we got offered a radio show.
Well,
That's when it all
second best
started.
thing, yeah.
But I mean, we were obsessed. I was obsessed. And the soundtrack is still good. It's a fun movie if people need a reminder and just something to feel good. Bridget Jones'
I want to
Diary.
know why
You're
can't-
still not centered, Lori. It's ridiculous what you're trying to do. Lori's off camera. She's over in the other
Buddy,
room.
You're right. You're right.
Flashing something
your
in front of a
face.
camera that's just not
There it is.
working. But it's not
Hold
on.
that pose.
Hold that
I'm going to
pose.
have to be Vanna.
Oh my gosh.
All right.